The complete work of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 3, Section 4, Vedantism. The following address of welcome from the Hindu of Jaffna was presented to Swami Vivekananda. Srimat Vivekananda Swami. Reversed Sir, we, the inhabitant of Jaffna, professing the Hindu religion, desire to offer you a most hearty welcome to our land, the chief center of Hinduism in Shillong, and to express our thankfulness for your kind acceptance of our invitation to visit this part of Lanka. Our ancient ancestors settled here from the South India more than 2000 years ago and brought with them their religion, which was patronized by Tamil king of Jaffna. But when the government was displaced by the Portuguese and Dutch, the observance of the religion's right was interfered with. Public religious worship was prohibited and sacred temples, including two most far-famed shrines, were erased to the ground by the cruel hands of the persecution. In spite of the persistent attempt of this nation to force upon the forefathers the Christianity religion, they cling to their old faith firmly and have transmitted it to us as the noblest of our heritage. Now, under the rule of Great Britain, not only has there been a great and intelligent revival, but the sacred edifices have been and are being restored. We take this opportunity to express our depth felt gratitude for your noble and disintegrated labor in the cause of our religion, in carrying the light of truth as revealing in the Vedas to the parliament of religion in this emulation the truth of the divine philosophy of India in America and England and in many other Western world acquainted with the truth of Hinduism and thereby bringing the West closer to the touch with East. We also express our thankfulness to you for initiating the movement for the revival of our ancient religion in this materialistic age when there is a decadence of faith and disgrace for and disregard for search after spiritual truth. We cannot adequately express our indebtedness to you for making the people of the West know the Catholicity of our religion and for impressing upon the minds of the servant of the West the truth that there are more things in the philosophy of Hindus than are dreamt of in the philosophy of the West. We need hardly assure to you that we have been carefully watching the progress of your mission in the West and always heartily rejoice to your devotedness and successful labor in the field of religion. The appreciative reference made by the press in the great centers of the intellectual activity, moral growth, and religious inquiry in the West to you and to your valuable contribution to our religious literature bear eloquent testimony to your noble and magnificent effort. We beg to express our heartfelt gratification to your visit to our land and to hope that we, who in common with you, look to the Vedas as the foundation of all true spiritual knowledge, may have many more occasions of seeing you in our midst. Many God, who has hither- hitherto crowned your noble work with conspicuous success, spare you long, giving you a vigorous and strength to continue your noble mission. We remain reserved, sir, yours faithfully. For and on behalf of the Hindus of Jaffna, an eloquent reply was given, and on the following evening, Swami lectured on Vedantism, a report of which is here appended. The subject is very large and the time is short. A full analysis of the religion of the Hindus is impossible in one lecture. I will therefore present before you a salient points of our religion in as simple language as I can. The word Hindu, by which it is the fashion nowadays of to style ourselves, has lost all its meaning. For this word merely meant those who live on the other side of the river Indus in Sanskrit, Sindhu. This name was murdered into Hindu by the ancient Persians, and all people living on the other side of the river Sindhu were called by the name Hindu. Thus, this word has come down to us, and during the Mohammedans' rule, we took up the word ourselves. There may not be any harm in using the word, of course, but as I have said, it has lost its significance. For you may mark that all the people who live on this side of the Indus in modern times do not follow the same religion as they did in the ancient times. The word therefore covers not only Hindus proper, but Mohammedans, Christians, Jain, and other people who live in India. I therefore would not use the word Hindu. What word should we use then? The other words which, along with can use, are either the Vedikas, followed by the Vedas, or better still, the Vedantist, follower of Vedant. The most of the great religion of the world owes allegiance to certain books which they believe are the words of God or some other superstitional beings and which are basis of their religion. Now of all these books, according to the model seventh of the West, the oldest are the Vedas of the Hindus. I, lit- I little understand, therefore, is necessary about the Vedas. This mass of writing, called Vedas, is not the utterance of people. Its date has never been fixed and can never be fixed. And according to us, the Vedas are eternal. There is one salient point which I want you to remember, that all the other religions of the world claim their authorities has been delivered by a personal god or a number of personal beings, angels, and specific messengers of God unto certain person, while the claim of the Hindus is that the Vedas do not owe their authority to anybody. They are themselves the authority, being eternal, the knowledge of God. They were never returned, never created. They have existed throughout time. Just as creation is infinite and eternal, without beginning and without end, so is the knowledge of God without beginning and without end. And this knowledge is what is meant by Vedas. The mass of knowledge called the Vedanta was discovered by a personalized sages called rishis, and the rishis in defined is defined as a mantra drishta. Rishi is defined as a mantra drishta, a seer of thought. Not that the thought was his own. Whenever you hear that a certain passage of the Vedas came from a certain rishi, never think that he wrote it and created it out of his mind. He was the seer of the thought which already existed. It existed in the universe eternally. This sage was the discoverer. The rishi were spiritual discoverers. This mass of writing, the Vedas, is divided principally into two parts, the Karma Kanda and the Jnana Kanda, the work portion and the knowledge portion, the ceremonial and the spiritual. The work portion consists of various sacrifices. Most of them, of late, have been given up as not practicable under present circumstances, but others remain to the present days in some shape or others. The main idea of karma kanda, which consists of the duties of man, the duties of the student, of the householder, of the recluse, and the various duties of the different stations of life, are followed more or less down to the present day. but the spiritual portion of our religion is in the second part. The Jnana Khanda, the Vedanta, the end of the Vedas, the gist, the goal of the Vedas, the essence of the knowledge of the Vedas was called by the name of Vedant, which comprises the Upanishad and all the sect of India, dualistic, qualified monastic, monist, or the Shaivitist, Vaishnavist, Shantas, Shauras, Ganapatayas, each one of that dare to come within the fold of Hinduism and must acknowledge the Upanishad of the Vedas. They can have their own interpretation and can interpret them in their own way, but they must obey the authority. That is why we want to use word Vedantist instead of Hindu. All the philosophers of India who are orthodox have the knowledge of the authority of Vedant, and all our present day religion, however crude some of them may appear to be, however inexplicable now some of their purposes may seem. One who understands them and studies them can trace them back to the ideas of the Upanishad. So deeply have this Upanishad sunk into our race that those of you who study the symbology of the crudest religion of Hindus will be astonished to find something f- figurative expressions, sometimes figurative expressions of the Upanishad. The Upanishad becomes symbolized after time into figures and so forth. Great spiritual and philosophical ideas in the Upanishad are today with us, covered into household worship in the form of symbols. Thus, the various symbols now used by us all come from the Vedanta because in the Vedanta they are used as figures, and this idea spread among the nation and permeated it throughout until they became part of this everyday life as symbols. Next to the Vedanta come the Smritis. These also are the books written by sages, but the authority of the Smritis is subordinate to that of the Vedanta because they stand in the same relation with us as the scriptures of the other religions stand with regard of them. We admit that the Smritis have been written by particular sages. In that sense, they are the same as scriptures of other religions, but these Smritis are not final authorities. If there is anything in the Smriti which contradicts the Vedanta, the Smriti is to be rejected. Its authority is gone. These Smritis we see again have varied from time to time. We read that such and such Smriti should have authority in the Satyug and such in the Treta Yuga, some in the Dwapar Yuga and some in the Kali Yuga, and so on. As essential conditions change, as various circumstances came to have their influence on race, manners and customs had to be changed, and this smritis has mainly regulating the manners and the customs of the nation had also to be changed from time to time. This is a point I specially ask you to remember. The principles of religion that are in the Vedanta are unchangeable. Why? Because they are all because they are all built upon the eternal principles that are in the name of man and nature. They can never change. Ideas about the soul and going to heaven and so on can never change. They were the same thousands of years ago and they are the same today and they will be same millions of years hence. But those religious practices which are based entirely upon our social practices, which are based entirely upon our social positions and correlation with change with the changes in the society, such an order, therefore, would be good and true at a certain point and not at any other. We find accordingly that certain food is allowed at one time and not another because the food was suitable for that time, but the climate and other things changed. Various other circumstances required to be met. So the Smriti changed the food and the other things. Thus, it naturally follows that if in the modern times our society requires changes to be made, they must be met, and sages will come and show us the way how to meet them, but not one jot of the principles of our religion will be changed, they will remain intact. Then there are Puranas, Puranam Panchalakshanam, which means Puranas are five characteristics that which treat the history of cosmology with various symbological illustration of philosophical principles and so forth. These were written to the popularize the religion of Vedas. The language in which the Vedas were written is very ancient, and even among the scholars, very few can trace the date of these books. Puranas were written in the language of the people to that time, that what we call modern Sanskrit. There were then meant they were then meant not for scholars but for the ordinary people, and ordinary people cannot understand philosophy. Such things were given upon or unto them in concrete form by meanings of lives of saint and king and great men and historical events that happened to the race there. The sages made us use of these things to illustrate the eternal principle of religion. There are still other books like Tantras. These are very much like Puranas in some respect, and in some of them, there is an attempt to revive the old sacrifice idea of the Karma Kand. All these books constitute the scriptures of the Hindus. When there is such a mass of sacred books in a nation and a race which has devoted the greatest part of its energy to the thoughts of philosophy and spirituality, nobody knows for how many thousands of years. It is quite natural that there should be so many sects. Indeed, it is a wonderful that there are not thousands more. These sects differ very much from each other in certain points. We shall not have time to understand the difference between this sect and all the spiritual details about them. Therefore, I shall take up the common grounds, the essential principles of all these sects which ever Hindu must believe. The first question, the first is the question of creation, that this nature, Prakriti, Maya, is infinite without beginning. It is not that this world was created the other day, not that the God came and created the world and since that time has been sleeping. For that cannot be. The creative energy is still going on. God is eternally creating, is never at rest. Remember the passage in the Gita where Krishna says, if I remain at rest for one moment, the universe will be destroyed. If that creative energy, which is working all around us, day and night, stops for a second, the whole thing falls to the ground. There never was a time when the energy did not work throughout the universe, but there is a law of cycle, pralay. Our Sanskrit word of for creation, properly translated, should be projection and not creation. For the word creation in the English language has unhappily got that fearful, that most crude idea of something coming out of nothing. Creation out of non entity. Creation out of non-entity, non-existence become existence, which of course I would not insult you by asking you to believe. Our word therefore is projection. The whole of this nature exists. It becomes finer, subsides, and then after a period of rest, as it were, the whole thing is again projected forward, and the same combination, the same evolution, the same manifestation appears and remain playing, as it were, for a certain time only again to break into pieces, to become finer and finer until the whole thing subsides and again comes out. Thus, it goes on backward and forward with the wave like motion throughout entirely. Time, space, and causation are all within this nature. To say, therefore, that it had a beginning is utter nonsense. No question can occur as to its beginning or its end. Therefore, wherever in our scriptures the words begin and end are used, words beginning and end are used, you must remember that it means the beginning and the end of one particular cycle and no more than that. What makes this creation? God. What do I mean by the use of the English word God? Certainly not the word as ordinarily used in English. A good deal of difference. There is no other substitute word in English. I would rather confine myself to the Sanskrit word Brahman. He is the general cause of all this manifestation. What is this Brahman? He is eternal, eternally pure and eternally awake, the Almighty, the All Knowing, the All Merciful, the Omnipresent, the formless, the partless. He creates this universe. If He is always creating and holding up this universe, two different difficulties arise. We see that there is partiality in the universe. One person is born happy and another unhappy. One is rich, another is poor. This shows partiality. Then there is cruelty also. For here, the very condition of life is death. One animal tears another to pieces, and every man tries to get the better of his own brother. This competition, cruelty, or horror, science rending hearts day and night in the state of thing in this world of ours. If this be the creation of the God, that God is worse than cruel, worse than any devil, than man ever imagined. Ha, says the Vedant. It is not the fault of God that this partialities exist, that this competition exists. Who makes it? We ourselves. There is a cloud shedding its rain on all the fields alike, but it is only the field that is well cultivated which gets the advantage of the shower. Another field which has not been tilled or taken care of cannot get that advantage. It is not the fate of the cloud. The mercy of God is eternal and unchangeable. It is we that make the differentiation. But how can this difference of some being born happy and some unhappy be explained? They do not, they do nothing to make out that difference. Not in this life, but they did in their birth, last birth. And the difference is explained by this action in the previous life. We now come to the second principle on which we all agree. Not only all Hindus, but all the Buddhists and all the Jains. We all agree that the life is eternal. It is not that it has sprung out of nothing, for that cannot be. Such a life would not be worth having. Everything that has a beginning in time must end in time. If life begin but yesterday, it must end tomorrow, and annihilation is the result. Annihilation is the result. Life must have tomorrow. Life must have been existed. It does not know much require acumen to see that for all the sciences of modern times have been coming round to our help, illustrating from the material world the principle embodied in our spirit or in our scriptures. You know it already that each one of us is the effect of the infinite past. The child is a usured into the world, not as something flashing from, but he has the burden of infinite past, for good or evil. He comes to work out his own past deeds. That makes the difference, or that makes the differentiation. This is the law of karma. Each one of us is the maker of his own fate. His law knocks on the head at once all doctrines of predestination and faith and gives us the only means of reconciliation between God and man. We, and none else are responsible for what we suffer. We are the effect and we are the cause. We are free, therefore. If I am unhappy, it has been of my own making. That very thing shows that I can be happy if I will. If I am impure, that is also of my own making. And that very thing shows that I can be pure if I will. The human will stand beyond all circumstances before it. The strong, gigantic, infinite will and freedoms in man. All the powers, even the natural, must bow down, succumb, and become its servant. This is the result of the law of karma. The next question, of course, naturally would come or would be, what is the soul? We cannot understand God in our scriptures without knowing the soul. There have been attempts in India and outside of India too to catch the glimpse of beyond by studying external nature, and we all know what an awful failure has been the result. Instead of giving us a glimpse of above, the more we study the material world, the more we tend to become materialistic. The more we handle the material world, even the little spirituality which we possesses during the research vanishes. Therefore, that is not the way of spirituality to knowledge of the highest, but it must come through the heart, the human soul. The external working do not teach us anything about the beyond, about the infinite. It is only the internal that can do so. Through souls, through the analysis of the human soul alone, can we understand God? There are differences of opinions as to the nature of the human soul among the various sects in India, but there are certain points of agreement. We all agree that souls are without beginning and without end, and immortal by their very nature. Also, that all powers, blessings, purity, omnipresent, omniscient, are buried in his soul. That is a grand idea we ought to remember. In every man and in every animal, however weak or wicked, great or small, resides the same omnipresent, omniscient soul. The difference is not in the soul, but in the manifestation. Between me and the smallest animal, the difference is only in manifestation. But as a principle, he is the same as I am. He is my brother. He has the same goal as I have. This is the greatest principle that India has preached. The talk of the brotherhood of man becomes in India the brotherhood of the universal life, of animal and of all life down to the little ant. All these are our bodies. Even as our scriptures say, thus the sage, knowing that the same Lord inhabits all bodies, will worship everybody as such. That is why in India there have been such merciful ideas about poor, about animal, about everybody and everything else. This is one of the common grounds about our ideas of the soul. Naturally, we come to the idea of God. One thing more about the soul. Those who study the English language are often deluded by the words soul and mind. Our Atman and soul are entirely different things. What we call manas, the mind, the Western people call soul. The West never had an idea of soul until they got it through Sanskrit philosophy some 20 years ago. The body is here, beyond that is the mind, and the mind is not the Atman. It is the fine body, the Sukshma Sharir, made of fine particles which goes from birth to death and so on. But behind the mind is an Atman, the soul, the self of man. It cannot be translated by the words soul or mind, or so we have to use the word Atman, or the Western philosophers have designated it by the word self. Whatever word you use, you must keep it clear in your mind that Atman is separate from the mind as well as from the body, and that this Atman goes through birth and death, accompanied by mind and Sukshma Sharir. And when the time comes that it has attained to all knowledge and manifestation itself to perfection, then this going from birth to death ceases for it. Then it is at liberty either to keep that mind, the Sukshma Sharir, or to let it go forever and remain independent and free throughout all eternity. The goal of the soul is freedom. That is one peculiarity of our religion. We also have heaven and hell too. But these are not infinite, for in the very nature of things they cannot be. If there were any heavens, they would be only repetitions of the worlds of ours on the bigger scale, with a little more happiness and little more enjoyment. But that is all the worse of for the soul. There are many of these heavens. People who do good works here with the thoughts of reward when they die and born again as God in one of these heaven as Indra and others. These gods are the names of certain states. They also had been men and by good work they have become gods, and those different names that we read of such as Indra and so on are not the name of the same person. There will be 1,000 of Indras. Nahusha was the great king, and when he died, he became Indra. It is a position. One's soul becomes high and takes the Indra position and remain in it only a certain time, and then he dies and is born again as man. But a human body is the highest of all. Some of the gods may try to go to higher and give up all ideas of enjoyment in heaven, but as in this world, wealth and position and enjoyment deludes the vast majority, so do most of the gods become deluded also, and after working out their good karmas, they fall down and become human beings again. This earth, therefore, is a karma bhumi. It is this earth from which we attempt to liberate. So even this heaven are not worth attending to. What is then worth having? What is then worth having? Mukti, freedom. Even in the highest of heaven, says our scriptures, you are a slave. What matters it if you are a king for 20,000 years? So long as you have a body, so long as you are the slave to happiness, so long as time works on you, space works on you. You are slaves. The idea, therefore, is to be free of external and internal nature. Nature must fall at your feet, and you must tramp on it and be free and glorious by going beyond. No more is there life, therefore, no more is there death. No more enjoyment, therefore, no more misery. It is bliss, unspeakable, indestructible, beyond everything. What we all call happiness and good here are but particles of that either or eternal bliss. And this eternal bliss is a goal. The soul is also sexless. We cannot say of the Atman that is man or woman. Sex belongs to the body alone. As such ideas, therefore, as a man or a woman, are delusions when spoken with regard to the self, and are only proper when spoken of the body. So are the ideas of age. It never changes or it never ages. The ancient one is always the same, and how did it come down to earth? There is but one answer to that in our scriptures. Ignorance is the cause of all the bondage, and it is through ignorance that we have become bond. Knowledge will cure it by taking us to the other side. And how will that knowledge come? Through love, through bhakti, by the worship of God, by loving all beings as the temples of the God. He resides within them. Thus, with the intense love will come knowledge, and ignorance with disappearance. Ignorance will disappear. The bondage will break and the soul will be free. There are two kinds or two ideas of God in our scriptures. The one, the personal, and other, the impersonal. The idea of the personal God is that He is the omnipresent creator, preserver, and destroyer of everything, the eternal Father and Mother of the universe, but one who is eternally separate from us and from all souls. The end liberation consists in coming near to Him and living in Him. Then there is the other idea of impersonal, where all those adjectives that takes away the superfluous has illogical, and there remains an impersonal omnipresent being who cannot be called knowing being, because knowledge only belongs to the human mind. He cannot be called a thinking being because that is the process of the weak only. He cannot be called a reasoning being because reasoning becomes none creates except the bondage. He cannot be called as reasoning being because reasoning is a sign of weakness. He cannot be called as creating being because none creates except by in bondage. What bondage has he? None works except for the fulfillment of desire. What desire has he? None works except if it be the supply some wants. What wants has he? In the Vedas, it is not the word he that is used, but it for he would make an invidious discussion or distinction, as if God were man. It, the personal or impersonal, is used, and this impersonal, that is it, is preached. This system is called as Advaita. And what are our relations with this impersonal being? That we are He. We and He are one. Everyone is but the manifestation of that impersonal, the basis of all being. And the misery consists in thinking of ourselves as different from the infinite impersonal being. The liberation consists of knowing our unity with this wonderful impersonality. This, in short, are the two ideas of God that we find in our scriptures. Some marks ought to be made here. It is only through the idea of the impersonal God that you can have any system of ethics. In every nation, the truth has been preached from the most ancient times. Love your feelings, love your fellow beings as yourself. I mean, love human being as yourself. In India, it has been preached, love all beings as yourselves. We make no distinction between man and animal, but no reason was forthcoming, or no one knew why it would be good to love any others as ourselves, and the reason why is there in the idea of the impersonal God. You understand it when you learn that the whole world is one, the oneness of the universe, the solid, solitary loving anyone, solitary of all life, that in hurting anyone, I am hurting myself, and in loving anyone, I am loving myself. Hence, we understand why it is that we ought not to hurt others. The reason for ethics, therefore, can only be had from the idea of the impersonal God. Then there is a question of the position of the personal God in it. I understand the wonderful flow of love that comes from the idea of personal God. I thoroughly appreciate the power and potential of bhakti on men to suit the needs of different things or different times. What we know now want is our country, however, in not so much of whipping but a little strength. What a mine of strength is in this personal God, when all superstitions have been thrown overboard, and man stands on his feet with the knowledge, I am the impersonal being of the world. What can make me afraid? I care not even for nature's law. Death is a joke to me. Man stands on the glory of his own soul, the infinite, the eternal, the deathless, that soul which no instrument can pierce, which no air can dry, nor fire burn, no water melt, the infinite, the breath, birthless, the deathless, without beginning, without end, before whose magnitude the sun, moon, and all their system appears like a drop in the ocean, before whose glory space melts away into nothingness and time vanishes into non existence. This glorious soul we must believe in. Out of that will come power. Whatever you think that you will be, if you think yourself weak, weak you will be. If you think yourself strong, strong will you be. If you think yourself pure, pure you will be. If you think yourself pure, pure you will be. This teaches us not to think ourselves as weak but as strong, omnipotent, omniscient. No matter that I have not expressed it yet, it is in me. All knowledge is in me, all power, all purity and freedom. Why cannot I express this knowledge? Because I do not believe in it. Let me believe in it, and it must and will come out. This is what the idea of expressing or impersonal teachers is. Make your children strong from their very childhood. Teach them not weakness nor forms, but make them strong. Let them stand on their feet bold, all conquering, all suffering, and first of all, let them learn the glory of the soul. That you get alone in the Vedant, and there alone. It has ideas of love and worship and other things which we have in other religions, and more beside, but the idea of the soul is the life giving thought. The most wonderful there and there alone is the great thought that is going to revolutionize the world and reconcile the knowledge of the material world with religion. Thus, I have tried to bring before you the salient point of our religion, the principles. I have not to say a few words about the practice and the application. As we have seen, under the circumstances existence in India, naturally many sects must appear. As a fact, we find that there are so many sects in India, and at the same time we know that mysterious fact that these sects do not quarrel with each other. The Shavi- Shaviti Shaviti does not say that every Vaishnavit Shavish, every Vaishnavist is going to be damned. Not the Vaishnavists say every Shavishta will be damned. The Shavishta says, this is my path and you have yours. At the end, we must come together. They all know that in India. This is the theory of Ishta. It has been recognized in the most ancient times that there are various forms of worshipping God. It is also recognized that different natures require different methods, and your method is coming to God may be not be my method. Possibly it might hurt me. Such an idea has that there is but one way for everybody is injuriously, meaningless, and entirely to be avoided. Woe unto the world when everyone is of the same religions, opinion, so same religious opinion, and takes to the same path, then all religions and all thoughts will be destroyed. Variety is the very soul of life. When it dies out entirely, creation will die. When this variety is thought is kept, this variation thought is kept up, we must exist and we need not quarrel because of the variety. Your way is very good for you, but not for me. My way is good for me, but not for you. My way is called in Sanskrit as Ishta. Mind you, we have no quarrel with any religion in the world. We have each our Ishta. But when we see men coming and saying this is the only way and trying to force it on us in India, we have a word to say. We laughed at them. For such people who want to destroy their brothers because they seem to follow the different path towards God. For them to talk of love is absurd. Their love does not count for much. How can they preach of love who cannot bear another man to follow a different path from their own? If that is love, what is hatred? We have no quarrel with any religion in the world, whether it teaches the man to worship Christ, Buddha, or Mohammedan, or any other prophet. Welcome, my brother, the Hindus say. I am going to help you, but you must allow me to follow my way too. This is my Ishta. Your way is very good, no doubt, but it may be dangerous for me. My own experience tells me what food is good for me, and no army of doctors can tell me that. So I know from my own experience what path is the best path for me. That is the goal, the Ishta, and therefore we say that if a temple or a symbol or an image helps you to realize the divinity within you, you are welcome to it. Have 200 images if you like. It's certain forms and formularies help you to realize the divine. God speed up you. Have by all means when whatever form and whatever temple, whatever ceremonies you want to bring you near to the God, but do not quarrel about them. The moment you quarrel, you are not going Godward, you are going backward towards the brutes. These are a few ideas of our religion. It is one of the inclusion of everyone, exclusion of none. Though our caste and our institutions are apparently linked with our religion, they are not so. These institutions have been necessary to protect us as a nation, and when this necessity for self preservation will no more exist, they will die a natural death. But the older I grow, the better I seem to think of these time honored institutions of India. There was a time when I was used to think that many of them were useless and worthless, but the older I grew, the more I seemed to feel a diffidence in cursing any one of them, for each one of them is embodiment of experience of centuries. A child of birth yesterday, destined to die the day after tomorrow, comes to me and asks me to change all my plans, and if I hear the advice of a baby and change all my surrounding according to his idea, I myself should be a fool and no one else. Much of the advice that is coming to us from different countries is similar to this. Tell this wiseacres, tell this wiseacres, I will hear you when you have made a stable society yourself. You cannot hold on to one idea for 2 days. You quarrel and fail, and you burn like a month in the spring and die like them in 5 minutes. You come up like a bubbles and burst like a bubble too. First, form a stable society like ours. First, make laws and institutions that remain undiminished in their power through scores of centuries. Then will be the time to talk on the subject with you. But till then, my friend, you are only a gig child. I have finished what I had to say about our religion. I will end my reminding you of one pressing necessity of the day. Praise be to Vyas, the great author of Mahabharata, that in this Kali Yuga there is one great work. The tapas and the other hard yogis that were practiced in other yugas do not work now. What is needed in the yuga is given, helping others. What is meant by dan, the highest of the gift, is the giving of spiritual knowledge. The next is giving the secular knowledge, and next is the saving of life. The last is giving food and drink. He who gives spiritual knowledge saves the soul from many of births. He who gives secular knowledge opens the eyes of the human being towards spiritual knowledge. And far beyond this rank all other gifts, even the saving of life. Therefore, is necessary that you learn this and note that all other kinds of works are much less value than that of imparting spiritual knowledge. The highest and the greatest help is that given in the dissemination of spiritual knowledge. There is an eternal fountain of spirituality in our scriptures and nowhere on earth, except in this land of renunciation, do we find such noble examples of practical spirituality. I have had a little experience of the world. Believe me, there is much taking in the other hands, but the practical man of religion who has carried it into his life is here and here alone. Taking is talking Talking is not religion. Parrot may talk, machine may talk nowadays, but show me the life of renunciation, of spirituality, of all suffering, of love infinite. This kind of life indicates a spiritual man with such ideas and such noble practical example. In our country, we would be a great pity if the treasure in the brains and hearts of all these great yogis were not brought out to become the common property of everyone, rich and poor, high and low, and only not only in India, but they must be thrown broadcast all over the world. This is one of our greatest duty, and you will find that the more you work to help them or others, the more you help yourself. The one vital duty incumbing incumbent of you, if you really love your religion, if you really love your country, is that you must struggle hard to be up and doing with this one great idea of bringing out the treasure from your closed books and delivering them over to their righteous hire. And above all, one thing is necessary. For ages, we have been saturated with awful jealousy. We are always getting jealous of each other. Why has this man a little precedence and not I? Even in the worship of God, we want precedence. To such an state of slavery have we become. This is to be avoided. If there is any crying sin in India at this time, it is this slavery. Everyone wants to command and no one wants to obey. And this is owing to the absence of wonderful brahmacharya system of yore. First, learn to obey. The command will come by itself. Always first learn to be a servant, and then you will be fit to be a master. Avoid this jealousy, and you will do great works that have yet to be done. Our ancestors did most wonderful works, and we look back upon their work with veneration, and pride. But we also are going to do great deeds and let others look back with the blessings and pride upon us as their ancestors. With the blessings of the Lord, everyone here will do such deeds that will eclipse those of our ancestors, great and glorious as they may have been.